Hello guys, my name is Victor Bloodstone. Today I will be telling you guys about 4 true, original, creepy and disturbing paranormal stories happened on Halloween. So let's get started. Story 1. The Haunted Costume Shop. Halloween had always been my favorite holiday. The thrill of dressing up in elaborate costumes and venturing out into the night to collect candy was a childhood joy that never truly faded. But one Halloween, when I was in my late teens, I experienced something that shattered my love for the holiday. My friends and I decided to visit a local costume shop that was known for its extensive collection of outfits, masks, and props. As we entered, the bell above the door jingled, and I was immediately struck by the sheer volume of costumes that surrounded us. It was as if I had stepped into a labyrinth of imagination. I drifted toward the back of the shop, where a rack of vintage costumes caught my eye. Among them, a faded, Victorian-era dress stood out. It was exquisite, and I decided that it would be the perfect addition to my costume for that year. A haunted doll. That night, as I donned the Victorian dress and applied ghostly makeup, I couldn't help but feel an unease settling in. It was as if the dress had a presence of its own, a whisper of something that had once been. But I shrugged off the sensation, attributing it to the eerie ambience of Halloween. Trick-or-treating was uneventful, and my friends and I returned home, our bags of candy a testament to our successful night. But as the clock neared midnight, I noticed something unsettling. The dress I had worn was not where I had left it. I searched the house, my heart pounding, and finally found the dress in my closet. I assumed that one of my friends had played a prank, but they all denied any involvement. I dismissed it as a momentary lapse of memory and hung the dress back where it belonged. Over the next few nights, I experienced a series of bizarre occurrences. The dress would mysteriously appear in different parts of the house, and I would hear soft, spectral laughter in the quiet hours of the night. I began to have vivid, disturbing dreams of a girl from a bygone era, trapped within the dress, longing for release. The final straw came when I awoke one night to find the dress draped over me, its fabric feeling ice cold against my skin. I could see the girl from my dreams standing before me, her eyes filled with sorrow. I screamed, and the room was plunged into darkness. I never wore the dress again. I returned it to the costume shop, explaining the strange occurrences, and the shopkeeper told me a chilling tale. The dress had once belonged to a girl named Eliza who had lived in the 19th century and died tragically at a Halloween party. Her spirit had been trapped in the dress, seeking to relive the joy of the holiday through those who wore it. Halloween would never be the same for me. The joy of dressing up was replaced by a lingering fear, a reminder that sometimes, the costumes we wear on this night can harbor more than just playful spirits. Story 2. The Ghostly Masquerade. Halloween had always been a night of revelry and costumed festivities, but one year, I encountered something that blurred the lines between celebration and the supernatural. My friends and I were invited to an exclusive Halloween masquerade, a glamorous affair hosted in an opulent mansion rumored to be haunted. The mansion was a spectacle of grandeur, its chandeliers casting an eerie glow over the partygoers in elaborate masks and costumes. As the night wore on, I found myself drawn to a mysterious figure in a striking, Venetian-style mask. The figure was dressed in an exquisite, crimson robe, and their mask held an air of mystique. We danced and conversed, the night turning into a whirlwind of music and laughter. But as the clock neared midnight, the revelry took an unsettling turn. The masked figure, whose identity remained a mystery, led me into a dimly lit room at the mansion's periphery. There, a bizarre, ancient ritual was in progress, one that involved chanting and the burning of strange herbs. I watched in a state of surreal dread as the figure began to chant in a language I couldn't understand. The room grew colder, and a shadowy presence seemed to envelope us. The other partygoers, masked and costumed, continued the eerie ritual without question. As the chant reached its climax, a piercing wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging us into darkness. I felt an icy grip on my arm and was dragged into a corner. The masked figure whispered urgently, their voice a trembling quiver. They explained that the ritual was a summoning of restless spirits, a tradition that had been performed for generations on Halloween night. But something had gone horribly wrong. The spirits that had been invoked were not the benign ancestors of old, they were vengeful and malevolent entities. Panic surged through me as I realized the gravity of the situation. The masked figure urged me to leave the mansion immediately, warning that the spirits would not rest until they had claimed the souls of the living. We fled the room, but the hallways of the mansion seemed to shift and change, as if we were trapped in a nightmarish maze. As the spirits drew closer, their presence was palpable, a cold, ghostly wind that brushed against my skin. The figure and I stumbled upon a hidden passage and escaped the mansion just as the clock struck midnight. We were the only ones to make it out, and we watched in horror as the mansion's grand facade was consumed by an otherworldly fire, a blaze that seemed to be fueled by the vengeful spirits. The masked figure finally revealed their face, a face that held a profound sadness. They explained that they were a guardian, tasked with preventing the spirits from wreaking havoc on the living. The masquerade had been an ill-conceived attempt to pacify the vengeful entities. I left that Halloween night with a sense of awe and terror, knowing that the spirits of the past could be summoned by the living, and that sometimes, the line between celebration and the paranormal could blur into a nightmare. Story 3, The Curse Haunted House. Halloween had always been a time for haunted houses and thrill-seekers, but what I experienced on one chilling All Hallows Eve left me with a chilling tale to tell. My friends and I had heard rumors about a supposedly cursed haunted house, a place where countless horrors had occurred over the years. Intrigued by the stories, we decided to test our courage and visit the house on Halloween night. The house was a decrepit, two-story structure, its windows shattered and its walls covered in eerie graffiti. As we entered, the air grew heavy, and the darkness inside seemed to envelop us. We began to explore, our flashlights illuminating the dilapidated rooms. In one room, we found old, tattered children's toys, their presence sending a shiver down our spines. In another, a rotting portrait of a family that had once lived there, their eyes seeming to follow our every move. The sense of unease grew with each step, but we pressed on, our laughter masking our fear. As we ascended the creaking staircase to the second floor, we heard faint, ghostly laughter, the laughter of children. It seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere, echoing through the desolate hallways. The source of the laughter revealed itself as we entered a small, attic-like room at the end of the corridor. In the center of the room stood a dilapidated rocking chair, swaying back and forth as if moved by an unseen hand. In the rocking chair sat a spectral child, a little girl with hollow eyes and a forlorn expression. She stared at us, her gaze filled with longing. We were frozen in terror as the room grew colder, our breath visible in the frigid air. The little girl beckoned to us, and we couldn't resist her silent plea. We approached, our hearts pounding, and she spoke to us. Her name was Emily, and she had died in the house decades ago, a victim of a tragic accident. She was trapped in the house, unable to find peace. Her story was one of sorrow and unfinished business, and she implored us to help her. She wanted us to find her favorite toy, a small porcelain doll that had been lost on the property. She believed that if we could reunite her with the doll, she could finally move on to the afterlife. Determined to help Emily find peace, we scoured the house, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. After what felt like hours, we discovered the porcelain doll in a dusty, forgotten corner of the attic. We brought it to Emily, and as she clutched the doll to her chest, a warm, ethereal light enveloped her. She smiled, her eyes no longer empty, and with a final farewell, she vanished into the light, leaving the haunted house forever. We left the house with a sense of wonder and disbelief, knowing that sometimes, the spirits of the past can reach out to the living on Halloween night, seeking solace and closure. Story 4, The Fandoms Ball. Halloween night was always a time for revelry and costume parties, but one year, I found myself in a situation that went beyond the realm of ordinary celebration. I had been invited to a grand masquerade ball, a lavish event held in a historic mansion, its opulent architecture adding an air of mystery to the night. I arrived in a Venetian-style mask and an elaborate costume, ready to dance the night away. The ballroom was a sight to behold, its chandeliers casting a soft, ethereal light over the elegantly dressed guests. As I moved through the crowd, I was captivated by a woman in a stunning, antiquated gown, her mask a masterpiece of intricate design. We danced and conversed, and as the night wore on, I became enchanted by her presence. Her eyes held a depth of sadness, and I felt a connection that transcended the elaborate masquerade. But as the clock neared midnight, the atmosphere in the ballroom shifted. The music became haunting, and a chill seemed to sweep through the air. The other partygoers, their masks concealing their identities, began to engage in an eerie, synchronized dance that mirrored the movements of a bygone era. I watched in awe as the woman I had been dancing with joined the surreal performance. The dance was filled with longing and despair, a testament to a past that could not be forgotten. The room seemed to warp and change, and I felt as if I had been transported to another time. Suddenly, the dance came to a halt, and the guests froze in place. The woman turned to me, her eyes filled with sadness, and removed her mask to reveal a face that held an unbearable sorrow. She introduced herself as Isabella and told me her story. Isabella had lived in the mansion in the 19th century, a time of grandeur and extravagance. She had been in love with a man from a lower social class, a love that was forbidden by the norms of the time. Their love had been kept a secret, hidden from the judgmental eyes of society. But tragedy had struck on Halloween night. Isabella's beloved had been lost to a sudden illness, and their love had remained unfulfilled. Isabella had danced with him one last time in the mansion, a bittersweet farewell. The dance had become a haunting tradition, one that was performed by the spirits of the mansion on every Halloween night. Isabella longed for closure, a final dance that would free her from the mansion's grasp. With a sense of determination, I agreed to help Isabella find the closure she sought. We joined the other guests in the ghostly dance, our movements a tribute to a love that had transcended time. As the clock struck midnight, Isabella's spirit glowed with an ethereal light, and with a final, mournful smile, she vanished into the night. I left the masquerade with a sense of awe and wonder, knowing that sometimes, Halloween could bridge the gap between the living and the spirit world, and that love, even in death, could find its fulfillment. If you liked the stories, then consider liking the video and subscribing my channel, as it would motivate me to make more videos for you guys, and thank you for watching this video.